Welcome to Advisors on Growth. I'm your host, Derek Colin. In today's episode, we have a special guest. His name is Scott Hayford. He is the founder and CEO of Black Haze. How are you doing today?
Good. Pleasure being
Awesome.
here.
Yeah, thank you. Can you share a bit about your role and how it fits into the bigger picture over at Black Haze?
Sure. As the CEO founder, I built a company designed to really help early stage tech companies. And so at this stage, a lot of it has to do with working with not only the companies, but these individuals that become our advisors, because a lot of them are post military and they're just kind of trying to figure out what to do next. So that's part of it, is it's just kind of like a mentoring type role in a lot of what we do.
Oh, okay. And how many years of experience do you bring to the table when you started Black Haze?
Sure. So I came into this as a prior enlisted Army guy with 6.5 years, 23 years in the Air Force. And then after that, I started with Northrop Grumman for a couple of years. And then I became a CETA, which is an advisor to the U.S. Air Force. I did that for another basically 2 years before I started Black Haze. So really, you've got, 30 plus years of experience, both on the military side, but also in the industry side.
Awesome. And can you break down exactly what it is you and your teams of advisors do for these contracts, or can you just give us a better idea so that we understand?
Yeah. So what I discovered both while in uniform and then after I got out of uniform was a challenge with advisors and early stage companies. So as a company, when you get to a certain point, you have the revenue to hire on business development, hire on advisors at a higher price point because you have a viable product that's gaining traction, you're able to get contracts. But when you're an early stage technology company, you don't always have the resources to spend $60 to $120,000 a year, plus give up a percentage of an award on a contract to an advisor. And so I wanted to create a different model that could help companies that are basically sub 3 to 5 million a year, and we could help them get through the journey that happens typically in the first 3 years so that they can actually get to that level. And so that's the idea behind this model, is we are low cost. Our entire team understands that. We operate at the government per diem rate. We focus on being geographically separated. So if you go to our webpage, you can see how our advisors, as well as events, the government innovation offices, they're all mapped out geographically, with the emphasis of it's not about one individual in one location. A lot of advisors are in the DC area or near military installations or government facilities. It allows us to be more diverse, which of course reduces also the travel costs. So that's another aspect of this, is how do you drive down those costs so that you can still have those one-on-one meetings, the face-to-face meetings that are valuable, but you're not spending $2,000 to $3,000 just to go out for a 30-minute meeting.
Awesome. And what type of, I would say, vertical or tech companies, or do you look for, or are they looking for you? What type of what does the integration look like, if you're allowed to talk about it? Like,
Yeah,
what is it?
so we are subsea or subsurface to space as far as the hardware. So we do look for companies that have technology, but we're not a services company. But so if you have hardware, we do encourage you to have a services contract as part of that hardware sale. But we're not in a, we don't like to take on companies that are just looking to provide butts in seats. We really want to focus on the actual technology, because what we're bringing to this ecosystem is the ability, that first 3 years while you're still developing and designing, modifying your product to work in the government space. Typically, for most technologies at a certain stage, their commercial solution may not fit into the government solution without it being modified. Whether it's hardening both software and hardware, right? The components need to be, in many cases, resilient in the environments. A lot of times it's negative temperatures on up to 120, 140 degrees. They've got to operate high dust environments, right? So the desert, we learned that in Desert Storm 1 when we went out there, right? So a lot of times those modifications of technology have to happen. And so that's why we have that journey. So we're open to any type of product. We're also not just tied down to the Department of War. We also look at the other agencies in the government, because I think a lot of people forget how big the US government is, in the sense of our agencies are massive. If you go over to other countries and then have discussions with similar agencies, you will discover no matter what, we are typically 10 times bigger. So
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting in that regards.
And I notice in the news we have AI in defense, we have Space Force. There's a lot of new implications and or applications that there's a use case for AI in regards to the DoW. What major shifts are you seeing in your industry when it comes to providing these meaningful texts to the government?
So the number one thing I think I'm seeing, especially in the last 6 months, is a lot of companies are starting to recognize their talent, the human talent, is critical. And it's not about firing them because, oh, I can use AI to do it. It's about how do I get that individual to adopt AI to go faster, be more efficient, more effective, especially when I look at the security side. So when we look at some of the software products that are being built, your level of understanding as a human, whether you've been in the industry for 1 year or for 30 years, is how are you keeping up with all of the new changes that are happening, because they're happening so fast. And so I just actually had 3 new software developers I brought onto a project, and they're moving, I would argue 10x faster than the previous developers I had. But not only are they moving faster, they're more secure because they're using AI to ensure that their code is secure, right? It's using the best practices that have just happened in the last 6 months. They're using that. Whereas in the past, you might have some great code that comes in that looks awesome, but then when you dig into it, you're like, oh my God, we have this massive backdoor on this thing. And so I think that's on the government side. I think that's what they're recognizing as well is the ATO process, authorization to operate. That's one of the biggest hurdles for the U.S. government and for a company is to get that authorization to operate certification so that they can operate on federal software systems. Well, that's now with AI, they can do that faster. They can answer the 500 questions far faster than they could ever answer them before. And typically, it would take you another 40 hours of an engineer answering the questions. And now you can literally have AI answer those questions for you about your software product and quite honestly be more accurate about those answers.
Oh wow, that's really cool. So when it comes to this trend of things moving a lot faster and coding agents and AI engineers being able to code, probably 10x faster than they did, a decade or two ago, how is that impacting your business? Is it good? Is it bad? Is there someone who can actually check once they have that ATO, I believe you said, on the back end once they're certified, just to have that extra trust factor when it's done or when the coding's done? Who checks these things to make sure there is no backdoors or loopholes and stuff? Like, that's
So
kind of
it's
scary.
always in the past, on the government side, obviously they're taking the answers to those questions, and then they'll have individuals, they'll sandbox, and they'll test software to look for those. But there's lots of ways that you can get around those, and so obviously it comes down to the quality of the individuals that are working to validate software that's being introduced to the federal system. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next 6 to 12 months, as far as how security evolves. Because right now, right, we have CMMC, the cybersecurity requirements for all companies to have to make sure that they're not leaking information to foreign adversaries. That costs money, right?
Mhm.
Self-assessment for phase one, you could, some people say, oh, well, it doesn't cost any money. But I'm sorry, anyone that's been in the outside government where it's all sunk costs, your labor hours are already sunk costs. Anyone in the commercial side understands that an hour of your time is cost, right? No matter how quickly you get that certification done, that self-assessment, those
Mhm.
hours cost money. Whereas on the government side, they're oblivious to true cost. So anyone that's been in government for any really long time, especially if they came in when they're 18 as a GS5 or 7, there's no calculation in their head about the cost in human time because that's a sunk cost. And it's one of those things for the military, you're not exposed to it until, after you get out. And then you're like, oh, wait, that's money, right? So, and then we get into the other issues, right? Getting IL4 and 7, getting your certifications of your systems. Those are all very, very expensive endeavors for companies. I'm hopeful that AI will become one of the solutions for the government, but it's hard to say when and how it'll be implemented and where that'll
Yeah.
go. I know it, it's being looked at, but who
Yeah.
knows how long it's going to take them? Because obviously, as the industry builds, there's a lot of companies out there doing it. Therefore, there's going to be companies that are going to be lobbying not to
Mm.
use AI to do it, right? And you hear it, oh, security risk, and you hear people complaining that you can always, cause AI not to be good. And yes, that's true, and especially over the last few years, the hallucinations, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The reality is, it's only getting better. I hear
Mm.
individuals say, "Oh, yeah, that sucks," and they're like, "Well, when's the last time you used it?" "Well, I used it 6 months ago." Well, if you didn't use it yesterday, you're already out of date, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
that's the reality of this environment. And for humans, that is a totally different thing, right? Moore's law, 18 months. That's all going out the window right now, and people are having a really hard time wrapping their heads around that aspect of it.
Yeah, no, that's true. I hear it under the new administration, under Trump, Trump talking about we have the craziest technologies that I can't even talk about that, he's mentioned in the news. How do you vet or with your advisors the right kind of talent, but the right type of person? Are these like these types of scientists that have gone missing type of people, or like, oh, how do you vet them?
Right. Remember, so well, as far as vetting our advisors or vetting in the companies that we take on.
Vetting the companies or the software as a service, the tech companies, the ones
So
that
our role in vetting them, we're not necessarily seeking to vet the company from, oh, this is what the government needs. We look at them from the standpoint of, is this a viable product, right? Have you gained traction in the commercial environment? Have you been able to demonstrate your product in a test environment out in the field? We look at it from that perspective more so because we want to be a neutral player with the government, because our reputation with the government is we're not selling this, right? Because we don't get an award, we don't get percentage of a sale. So unlike other consultants that might go to the government and say, hey, you really need to buy this and $1 million would be great because I'm getting 20% on the back end of this, so you should buy this. We don't have that incentive
yeah.
because of our model. We are neutral to the sale. And so our only thing is hey, this is a good company, it has a great widget. Government, you take it, you go test it, you come back to us and say, yeah, we like it, or you know what, they need to tweak it. That'd be great. We'd love to get that feedback, but we really step out of the way and we kind of let the company and the government talk to each other. We're listening a lot of times for, it's great that it does this, but it'd be really awesome if it did these other things too, because that's where we come in and we look at our other companies and we invite them in to see if we can get an integration to happen. And that's typically what you'll see in the environment is you'll have a company that makes a great product, but that's only one part of the problem, right? They're solving one part, and the decision maker has 1,000 problems and only money for a certain percentage of them. And so when you're a product that can only solve one of those problems, that's great, but it may not necessarily meet the cut line because the decision makers got so many other problems to solve. So a lot of times we're looking at it from the perspective of, hey, if we take this and these other two companies and we get that tech together, now we're solving 3, 4, 5 of the problems,
Mhm.
which for the decision maker becomes a more viable solution to bring back to the
Mm.
government, right? So that's the challenge there. Now, the integrators out there, the Northrop, Raytheon, Lockheed, the big ones, they do that at the guidance of the government. They make the products, right? They look at the problem and then they create the solution. So all
Yeah.
those big weapon systems are solving multiple problems. The problem with that is their overhead costs are significant, and therefore their wrap rate on that solution is extremely high, right?
Mhm.
So if you looked at what it really costs to build an F-35, what percentage of that, after you pay for the actual manufacturing, right, that kind of thing, what percentage of that is actually their overhead rate? And a
Yeah.
big chunk of it
Right.
is, right? And
So
so,
so if I was coming in as an entrepreneur and I developed this amazing technology or hardware and I wanted your advisory, I wanted to work with you to kind of get my foot in the door. I shouldn't be looking at this from a transactional, right? I should be more looking at it as how do I solve a problem, whether it's for the Golden Dome or satellite technology that would assist with the Golden Dome, protect humanity, things of that nature. I should be more focused on solving a problem and actually helping cause rather than transactional. Is that what you look for as well?
Yeah, we have one client that's a great example of this. 6 years ago, he came in with one product, and I loved it. I thought it was an exceptional product. It solved a problem, but he was exceptional at listening to the customer. And he came to me and he said, "I think what I've been presenting, it's there. They like it, but it's not solving the problem. They got this other problem." And I was like, "Well, I mean, if you want to go solve it, you should go solve it." And he did. He pivoted all the investment, all the time, and he pivoted to the problem he sensed the government had. And now he's executing that new solution in Ukraine right now. And he's gaining traction because he pivoted, because he
Yeah,
listened to the customer. And that's really hard for entrepreneurs to truly listen to the customer's needs in that
yeah.
regards, because they've invested so much time, energy, ego
The
into
ego.
their solution, right? They don't, no. And you of course you have the Jeff Bezos who said, or the Apple. You have that. Well, they don't know what they want, so I'm gonna
Yeah,
I'm gonna give them what they want. And there is something to be said for that. Not to say it doesn't end up being successful. It's just that your journey may take a little bit longer. It may be a little bit more frustrating, right? Versus, hey, if I really listened to the customer, might have found my way there on an easier path. Because in the end, especially in the government, you want champions, right? You
yeah,
want people pulling you in versus you trying to force your way in. The challenge in the military course is that your champion may disappear while you're in that journey, whether it's retirement, PCS to a new assignment, all of that promotion, that happens. So that
yeah,
makes it very challenging sometimes.
yeah. So what's working well for you right now for Black Haze, and what's been frustrating?
Working well is that we don't really market. It's word of mouth. So CEOs talk to other CEOs and say, "Hey, this is a great model. You guys should talk to Black Haze." So from that perspective, it's working well. Our engagements are improving. Our software at the website you see there at blackhaze.com, it's getting better because we're expanding the back end. We're mapping out the congressional leadership. We're mapping out the venture capital side to help these early stage companies. We're working on
Mhm.
opportunity development where we can identify opportunities a little bit more effectively for them. So from that perspective, it's going well. The other side of that coin, of course, is trying to figure out where the government's going, right? You got a $1.5 trillion increase in the budget. Is that going to really happen or not? What kind of CR are we going to be looking at this fall? With the elections, how those play out. If the party or the House or the Senate switch or both switch, what does that mean for next year? Because obviously, they've already announced that the Democrats, if they get in power, they're going to start the impeachment process. So now we're going to be dealing with a year of that. And so, is there going to be any progress on the economy and the budget? So, for our clients, especially small ones, a year is a long time on their runway, right? That
Yeah,
burn rate
yeah,
to keep their quality, the quality of their employees, that kind of thing. That's part of what Black Haze is we try to drive that cost down so that you can focus your dollars on your engineers and that runway. So that's a concern for us, is the next 12 to 18 months for these clients, is what does the runway look like? The problems are still there. They don't go
yeah,
away, right?
yeah.
So that's a
I can
challenge.
imagine how challenging and frustrating that may be, whether Democrat or Republican, when they're kind of bickering and fighting amongst each other, and it's kind of ruining, or not ruining, but it's not helping us move forward in a positive light, if that makes sense, as a country. So,
Yeah, I mean, the
yeah,
politics are one thing. I think a lot of people have to recognize that behind closed doors, both sides are still working for their constituents in some way. Now,
yeah,
definition of constituents for each one of those individuals is different depending on how many years they've been in office. Because if you want to be on a committee, you have to be having dollars come into you for donations, right, to run for office, and those dollars get you a seat in the House and the Senate, right, on the committees that help you make it easier to raise money. And so that process can result in the priorities adjusting as you evolve in Congress, right? So 2 years as a House of Representatives, 6 years as a senator. So the reality there is, behind closed doors, those individuals will talk to each other because they're trying to support their districts. So a company that comes in with a widget, that's great, but which district is that in? So who does it help? It's much better though when you bring in a widget that is in multiple states. And it's even better when you bring in a widget that comes from a red and blue state, right? Because now you've got cross-party, cross-aisle interests. So those aspects of all of this happen behind a closed door. What we as a public see on the outside has to do with when these elections happen is I got to look like I hate you right now. But behind the closed door, I might not agree with you, but we still need to get that money to flow so that I can go and fund my constituents and my district, et cetera. So there's a lot of that going on in the background, and we see it all the time. That's why there is a $1.5 trillion budget, is both sides are talking to each other, trying to negotiate. And that number will settle somewhere based on the interests of all parties involved. You just won't see it from the public side, right?
Yeah, because in the news, it seems like, and I always knew like behind like in Congress and stuff like that, behind closed doors, they got to be talking like communicating, at least being respectful to each other. But they make it seem on the news like it's Mike Tyson versus Buster Douglas. As soon as they see each other, someone's getting knocked out.
It's I'm sure there's a few in there that the relationships are very fractured and they don't want to talk to each other and they don't want to help each other out. But in the end, the staffers underneath them, they're all working.
Yeah.
They're all the staffers know what needs to happen to get the bills signed, to get the money flowing to the district, to solve the priorities of those representatives. The staffers are doing that. And so, in the end, I can say I hate the California, New York, whatever, governors, whatever. Doesn't matter because in the end, the money's still going to be flowing. Northrop Grumman has a massive facility in California and it still receives funds, right? Anduril is a great example. If you go on opensecrets.org, you can see where donations are put, right? Go look and see. It's both sides. You can see it. The big companies understand how to play the game and they will donate to both sides of the aisle to make it happen.
Yeah. So. Interesting. Awesome. Yeah. So when an issue arises for, within your organization, Black Haze, when do they typically bring you in, or a founder, CEO, or someone?
Yeah, we're a very flat organization. All the advisors, they help where they can. I'm actually working on a product to help advisors identify their interests and their expertise so that we notify them, oh, we're working with this one company. If you're interested, jump on the phone call. And so we're working on that, but we try to keep it very flat because no one, especially in government, no one is an expert of everything. I'll guarantee it, right? Anyone that says they are, then they're lying, plain and simple. Because every single organization is so big and so broad and evolving every single day. So it really helps to have a very diverse team. It's one of the things I learned when I first started Black Haze. I was by myself and I realized, oh, you can't scale consulting as an individual. It's you just can't do it because you've got your clients, and then every time you lose a client, you have to do business development to gain a new client, and then you have to learn everything about that client while you're still supporting your other clients, and that is very difficult to sustain over any long period of time. And so what the model we have now is we're trying to flatten that out, and so that, hey, I don't know anything about this, but we got 6 other people that may. So let's get them in the call and they'll have those discussions. And we haven't had a situation where no one knows, right? So across 50, I think we have 52 right now. There's someone in the team that's like, oh, no, I've been exposed to this. I know the right guy to go talk to. And so that part of it it's actually kind of fun to figure out who knows what in the ecosystem.
Awesome. You all support each other, which is really good.
And a lot of our advisors have their own LLCs and they have their own advisories and they have their own clients, right? And that's fine. And they have their own financial models in regards to that. We're just basically a bench of advisors that have come together to help each other out in a sense. Our model is at the end of the year, we kind of distribute whatever funds are left over. So it's very much like an employee-owned ecosystem versus a lot of the other advisory consulting companies. They don't distribute the funds to everyone, right? It's just a different model.
like a rev share. Yeah.
Yeah, we would be like an ESOP or employee owned company if we were a C corp, but we're not. We're an LLC. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So where do you, well, first of all, is there anything that you wanted to discuss that you felt was important in regards to Black Haze and what you're doing in the industry?
I think, for any companies that are out there looking at trying to get into government, recognize it's a marathon, not a sprint, which is our motto, and recognize it does take time. Yes, do you have the one-offs? Absolutely. When there's chaos and crisis in the world, you will have the one-offs where someone will quickly get a contract. If you're getting an SBIR grant, I caution you that those grants have a less than 1% chance of getting follow-on funding, and to understand that. I don't know how many times I've heard CEOs say, oh, well, we got on the IDIQ, it's easy, and it's $100 million. And you're like, that's great, but there's no money there. That's just an authorization to go up to $100 million. But unless someone provides the funds, there is no money there. And I don't know how
Yeah.
many times I've seen that happen where companies don't realize that they won $100 million, but there is no money, so there is no, because it was an IDIQ. And so we constantly have to go and kind of remind people what's happening there. So I think that's something to message folks, and make sure they understand that aspect of it. And the other part is I think a lot of companies really have to constantly assess AI. Do
Mm.
not dismiss it. Do not fire people because you think you can do it faster with AI. You need to empower your people to leverage AI, and I think the companies will go further faster if they do that versus thinking they can just drop the people. And it's a tool. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. So when it comes to like them winning a contract or, being implemented within, government or defense or wherever it may be, is there someone that kind of steps in from the administrative level that's within government and says, you need to have HR, you need an administrative team, you need this, and that. Otherwise, we can't take you on because you got no structure. You got to have some organization.
So I will say at the federal level that, and I probably argue that especially even the large cities, they understand when the new business comes on. So they're looking for subs on contracts, small businesses, and they'll help you in that regards. Part of what Black Haze does have, we do have a partner page and a map there where we too try to find legal and HR and financial support for companies so that they don't have to go looking around for it. They can come to the
Mm,
site and they can find it. We don't get anything from that.
mm,
Our belief in that is, we understand as a CEO, especially of a small company, you got 8 hats on, right? And it
yeah.
just depends on what day it is and where that hat is. And
Yeah.
so sometimes you just need someone to kind of give you some guidance and say, you know what, you need to talk to this lawyer for your patent protection. Go
Yeah.
talk to that lawyer. You need to go talk to this HR office for your human resources requirements for the government, right? Whether they hire them or not, that's up to them as a business. But at least now you're able to talk to someone and kind of understand, oh, these are the requirements, and I
Yeah.
can do that. I will say AI will help in that guidance too now, that you can at least, oh, what do I need to do? You can leverage it to at least give you your plan on doing that. But it's always nice to talk to a human to kind of understand what they're seeing, the nuances of, in the industry, because sometimes what's in the papers and in the documents is not exactly what is done in practice, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
it doesn't always convey over to the emotional
that's
levels of things.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And so that's a factor for sure. No doubt about it.
yeah. So where do you want Black Haze to be in the next 6 to 12 months from now?
That's a good question. Our goal is to try to start doing more of the actual bending metal integration. One of the things we've seen with a lot of our small companies is we can introduce them all the time together, and we can show them where the demand is by them working together. But in the end, it's very difficult for a small company to have the additional resources to do that integration. So for Black Haze, we're optimistic that over the next 12, 18 months, we will get to the point where we will take those capabilities and we will try to put them together as a solution outside of what those companies are targeting to build. So I'd like to think that's the direction Black Haze is going. We continue to look for additional advisors that may fill in our holes, if you want to call them that. Like, for example, Coast Guard. We feel like we don't have a good expertise in the Coast Guard. We have plenty of expertise in the rest of the services, but the Coast Guard is one that we feel like we could be a little bit better at and understanding their needs and the requirements. I've done work with HHS and Homeland Security, but it'd be nice to be a little bit more integrated there. I would also remind companies, sometimes the federal government's not the level you need to be at. Remember, the state governments are as big as some countries, and that we got several cities who have budgets that are bigger than over like 30% of the countries out there, GDP wise. You do need to recognize that and say, well, maybe I need to look at New York City or Los Angeles or Miami right now, right? All these industries are flooding into Florida and Texas and Tennessee right now from Massachusetts and New York and California and now Washington, right? They're flooding out of those states right now. And I shouldn't say flooding, but I mean, you're losing significant number of companies that are moving in. So the question is what are those states looking for? And maybe there's opportunities there to fill gaps and holes and other things if you have the right solution for them.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. To contribute to that ecosystem, if the economy is growing and new companies are leaving New York and they're migrating over to, set up their own or their established corporations in other states, what can they do to solve that problem or provide better solutions? Yeah.
Right. I mean, all these states still have money, right? Boston still has a budget. Even, it might be losing 3 companies, but it still has a budget. So, maybe that's an opportunity to knock on Boston's door with your solution. Security is still needed, whether at the national level or at the state level, right? Law enforcement's done at all levels. Data information, data flow. You can run down environmental. You can run down all of the problems that the federal government has, Department of War has. The only thing, and it would be a question of your business, are you blowing things up, right? Otherwise, your technology is probably applicable in other cities and states for the missions and the requirements and the responsibilities that those organizations and agencies have, right? And I think sometimes people forget about that. They get focused on, Department of War, they got a massive budget. So therefore, well, that budget's claimed by every single state, right? M1 tank is still being built. Why? Because Congress said to keep building it, despite the fact that the Department of War said we don't need it anymore. Actually, Department of Defense. And you can go back even in the Obama administration. They didn't need the M1 tank anymore, but politics said, no, you do, right? The A-10, the U-2. U-2 was supposed to be decommissioned, still flying, not going away, right? You can go down a lot of other weapon systems that are still up because why? Congress wants them to still be flying, not necessarily the military. And you can get into the arguments and the discussions on all those. But again, for companies, you got to kind of look across the spectrum and maybe the journey to get into the DOW or get into Department of Transportation, maybe it would be better to go to the state level or even the city or village level.
Yeah, interesting. Scott Hayford, thank you so much for joining us on Advisors on Growth. It's been a pleasure. For those of you who want to check out Scott Hayford, he is located on LinkedIn. If you want to look him up on his profile and make sure to go to his website. It's a really cool website. He's got some integrated technology there. It's blackhaze.com. That is blackhaze.com. Scott, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Derek. Appreciate it.